Hey, ladies and gents, and welcome to the Controlled Interest Gamecast, where we talk about video games and everything happening in the industry. As always, I'm joined by Dom.
We're in T-Lao 2 territory, fellas. Let's go. Let's go.
I don't even know what that means. And
Last
Jordan.
of Us 2.
Oh, okay. T-Lao. I was like, what the heck is he talking about? And Jordan's with us today.
Greetings and welcome to the autumn season, gentlemen.
The autumn season, yeah. Fall starts on my birthday, so that's cool.
It's definitely, it's one of those things where, like, people write it, you know, in posts and stuff as T-L-O-U, and that's how I read it in my head, but I hadn't said it out loud until just now, and it does sound kind of weird.
Dom, are you going to say Hubbada to Jerrad?
What's Hubbada?
What was his birthday?
Oh, yeah, I mean, happy birthday again, Jerrad.
I mean, he told me in the
Hubbada,
chat.
Jerrad,
But,
Hubbada.
yeah, thank you,
Hubbada.
guys.
I'm making fun of your fucking
My acronyms.
T-Lao thing.
God. Yeah, so I think I'll go first with what we've been playing. I'll hold off for Link's Awakening, so that can transition into Dom's thoughts. I guess the only things to mention are Apex Legends. The Season 2 is ending this week. Season 3 starts October 1st. I reached level 100 in it, which is dope. I got a really cool gun skin. And then there was a bonus gun skin that kind of evolved that one. The same skin, if you reach 110, it's like a bonus reward. So I was able to get that too. So this is the first time in any like multiplayer games battle pass that I've actually reached like level 100. Like I never did it for like Fortnite, though I didn't really play Fortnite. Or even like Magic the Gathering Arena. But speaking of Magic the Gathering Arena, the day of recording this, September 26th, they officially launched out of beta. And it's actually the release of the newest set, which is called Throne of Eldraine. And every Magic set is based on like something, right? It takes inspiration from either some sort of like fantasy world or some specific like fictitious theme. And this set is all about fairy tales. Funny enough, though, is there's a lot of cards in this set that look straight out of the world of Dark Souls, right? Because with fairy tales, it's more of like the Grimm's brothers fairy tales as opposed to like Disney-ified fairy tales, right? So it's a little bit darker in tone.
And what is the character's name, Jerrad?
In what?
The title?
Of the set is called Throne of Eldraine.
Eldraine.
I believe that's how you pronounce it. It's Eldraine.
Eldraine, maybe?
Yeah. Eldraine. Something like that.
The reason I stopped to ask was just because I love kind of like elvish sounding words and names.
So yeah, the cool thing with this, for it being based on like fairy tales, is there's a lot of elves, fairies, dwarves, and giants in the set in terms of like building decks around specific creature types. And the cool thing is, since I play this game almost every day, sometimes for like 20 minutes, sometimes I just pop in and pop out. But I had so much gold stored up that today, the day of launch, I was able to crack 60 packs with all in-game currency that I earned. And then because you earn these like tokens that you can create certain cards that you're missing for common, uncommon, rare, epic cards, or mythic in Magic the Gathering's case, I had so many of those built up too that I was literally able to get most of the set and create and craft the cards I wanted that I didn't pull in the packs. So now I just need to go through and build some new decks for the new rotation in Magic, because if you're unfamiliar with how Magic works, whenever a new set comes out, other sets rotate out of standard, so it keeps the game refreshing, so you don't have like the same punishing decks you're playing against over and over again. At least in the standard game mode, there's obviously like modern and other game modes that allow you to play with older cards. What else? Oh, I guess that's it for those two games. I'll go into Link's Awakening. So, for the uninitiated, I never played the original Link's Awakening or the DX re-release. I've never played this game. So, all I knew going in was that it was a Link, Legend of Zelda game in the traditional style, and that there was a bunch of weird, like, other Nintendo property characters in the game for some reason. So going into this, obviously with the remake, has a beautiful new art style. I'm having a blast with it, Dom. Me and you talked about it a little bit. That it's really weird, but it's actually quite like endearing in that way. Like it's weird to a point where you kind of fall in love with how weird it is. I'm currently 3 dungeons in. There's 8 total dungeons because you have to get each of the instruments to wake up the windfish. I will say I got stuck at one point. How far are you, Dom?
I'm 5 dungeons through.
Okay, so you know the 3rd dungeon that puts a focus on bombs, and like the 2 final bosses are like those weird beetle things that eat the bombs?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got stuck at that point because I didn't have any bombs. Mm-hmm. And instead of leaving and going to the shop and buying bombs, I decided to backtrack and back and forth and just crush pots until I got 10 bombs again.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is kind of frustrating.
I actually ran into the same problem. They didn't plan that out properly, I think. But there was a room I found off to the right or whatever in that dungeon that consistently spawned 1 bomb every time I went in and out in the pots. So I was able to at least do it. It didn't take too long, right? But I did run into that same problem where I'm like, I knew that's exactly where I had to go, and I knew that's how I had to beat those big worm things. But yeah, I didn't have enough bombs, and the spawn for the bombs in that dungeon weren't adequate for a dungeon that requires so many bombs.
And this goes to the point of, when people talk about remakes, it's like, well, how much do you want them to change it from the original, right? Like, how much do you want them to modernize it to make it feel like it deserves to be remade and played in the current day, right? Mm-hmm. So that dungeon had that problem, but it also had the problem that you actually get an extra silver key in that dungeon. And I was wondering, I was like, why do I have an extra key? And I looked at the map and I couldn't find the room. So after I kind of knocked my head against the wall trying to figure out what the hell this key was for, I Googled it. Turns out in the original release of Link's Awakening, there was a way that you could trap yourself where you couldn't complete the dungeon, so they added an extra key. But with the re-release, they didn't fix that issue, and they didn't remove the extra key. So you just end up with the extra key anyways.
Okay. I was wondering the same thing, because I got the key at the end, and I'm like, what the hell do I need this for? I just forgot about it, though.
Yeah, it's very weird. The Crane game, I've seen mixed opinions on it of people really having a blast with it or really finding it irritating. That thing's like super easy for me. Like I have no issues with it at all. I go in there and I clean house. It was the way I farmed to get rupees to be able to get the bow really early on. Because it's like 980.
Sorry, I thought you were finished there. I was just going to say, like, I've heard a lot about the game's performance.
No issues for me, weirdly enough. I don't know if Dom's the same way, but I haven't had any frame rate issues or really anything.
Yeah, I've not noticed anything either. It's been running perfectly smooth for me. So,
and I've also been only playing handheld, too. It's not like I was only playing docked.
Me too, actually.
Sounds like that is a little bit better performance-wise handheld in this particular case. Have you listened to Tim Geddes' thoughts on the game, Kind of Funny Gamecast?
No.
Me either.
Okay, he was saying that the game sounds like it has like a vignette filter around the edges of the screen.
I mean, that's part of like the tilt shift, like nature of the art style in general. It doesn't really. I honestly, until you saying that now, I haven't really even noticed it to the point of it like bothering me or anything.
Yeah, it's funny because not just that specifically is what bothers him. Although I will say, for me personally, what is it, Valkyria Chronicles? Basically everything being in vignette, that fucking bothers me. So, but no, he's talking about how it actually can affect the performance. And how he's even noticed it causing some sort of flicker effect. I haven't played the game, and I also am not in that dude's head, so I don't necessarily know exactly what he's talking about, but I just wondered if you guys had experienced something similar and already knew what I was getting at.
Well, I knew about the performance issues going in, and I was expecting to see them. Yeah, and I haven't noticed stuttering, I haven't noticed frame rate, I haven't, nothing really. Like, it's actually pretty surprising because it seems like such an apparent issue with people that I guess it's like the telltale thing I've talked about of like those problems were so common, and yet through every Yeah, every Telltale game I played, I never got any of those issues, like the weird like skeleton in Batman where he didn't like have a face, or a lot of the issues people had in Walking Dead. Like, for some reason, I was just extremely lucky with that stuff. Because when you look at it on YouTube, it's like, oh, that's really apparent. And I'm lucky enough to like dodge that stuff. Sounds like Dom was too for Link's Awakening.
Yeah, I didn't notice anything in Link's Awakening. There's also the aspect of it as some people are just more sensitive. That feels like a too strong of a word. Like,
no, I think it could be accurate because it can bother some people more than others. Like Jordan said about the vignette stuff, it's like for some people, some things like that are,
well, I meant more literal, and like the people that are used to playing everything maybe on PC at 60 frames per second are gonna notice probably frame drops, quicker and more often than someone who's used to playing on like a base PS4, for example, where everything's at 30 and often dropping. You probably kind of get used to it, so you don't notice it as much. And that's not meant as like an insult or whatever. Just like if you're used to something, you might notice more when it isn't quite up to par, I guess.
Yeah, your standard for what you expect, or what your eyes are used to seeing. Yeah, that's a valid point.
I always wonder that, like, obviously, video game glitches can be specific to literally one individual or can be widespread, but how much of it is going on without, there's got to be people out there that are playing a game that is glitching and they don't notice it glitching, right? And I'm not saying that that's necessarily happening with you guys. I'm sure you would recognize it, but I'm sure there's people out there that are playing like busted ass games or whatever, and then maybe someone else happens to have that same issue and it gets reported elsewhere and gets added to the update for the next patch. But it's just interesting to think that there's probably plenty of people out there not even realizing, just because they don't see games in that way.
I don't have anything else to add. Obviously, I'm not even halfway through because there's 8 total dungeons. Dom, is there anything you want to add before we move over to Jordan about Link's Awakening? And
no, I mean, I'm loving it. This was a game that I had originally played, on the DX version on Game Boy. For me, it was a Game Boy Color by then, but so I was super hyped for this. I'm still in the camp, although I proved myself wrong. By buying the game, I'm still in the camp that it costs more than it should, but I don't. This is back to like the Cross vs. X thing. It definitely should cost me like $40 or $50 if it were any other IP. And it's a Zelda game, so they can justify charging $60 for it, which is ultimately proven right by me, at least, because I bought the damn game for $60, and I'm sure a lot of people did. I expect it sold pretty well. But yeah, I had to point that out because that's been a topic of discussion. Like, this is a remake of a Game Boy game, so it's already smaller in scope. That when it first launched on Game Boy, it was like $30, and now they're charging $60 for it. It just feels a little odd, but it's Zelda and it's Nintendo, so they can do it, I guess.
I think it's funny that I've heard so many people say it feels a little odd. To me, it's just blatant. Like, it doesn't feel even a little bit odd. It's just totally like, same with Marvel Ultimate Alliance. It's like, I think Nintendo thinks they are so fucking bad to the bone that they can just do whatever they want. And
yeah, but they're right, I think.
But the thing is they are so convinced of it, and it's one of those things of like believing something so much can make it true, and so they push so hard into that mindset that it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy where it's like they are so convinced of it that others around them are starting to fall under that spell, and they're like, sure, I'll pay $100 for this stupid mini console with a 2-foot HDMI cord and all like 12 games that I could emulate anytime I want, which apparently you guys are just using ROMs that you downloaded off the internet in the first place. So,
which is so funny because Sony tried the same thing with their own portable console, and that thing flopped. Like, no one got it.
Yep.
They're like, no, it's way too overpriced.
It's interesting because it's kind of like Jordan, you're definitely right. That's definitely part of it where, like, if you set the price high enough yourself, you're indicating the quality of it. But sometimes that doesn't work if it doesn't follow through and you're Sony and your thing sucks. But if you're Nintendo and it's there and people pay for it, then it works. So it's kind of like a double thing. But I mean, think
My
about it, a lot of
biggest-
times you'll buy something because it's a certain price. Like you want to pay more for something, or at least you trust it more because it costs more. I mean,
Right.
certain things more than others, right? Like you don't want the cheapest doctor you can find. You'd be more comfortable paying more for a doctor, right?
And so, things are worth what people are willing to pay for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's my issue, is that unfortunately we are in this state now where a lot of us are just like slaves to Nintendo in that sense. And
Guilty.
it would be one thing. It'd be one thing if the premium controllers that they're putting out were actually, worth an extra $10 over the Xbox One or DualShock 4. But the fact of the matter is the HD Rumble it's not what it's cracked up to be. Like, it's not. First of all, it's in a lot of situations way too intense, and it's like having your phone on like the loudest metal surface without a case on it, and it just echoes throughout your entire house. And I don't know, I'm going on a way long tangent about HD Rumble at this point, but Joy-Con drift, whatever you want to talk about. I just think if you're going to talk up your premium product and charge us an extra $10 or how much ever, fucking put the quality into the build, please.
Yeah. That stuff and the prices never dropping for their games irritates me more than Link's Awakening being $60. But just because in comparison it doesn't seem as great.
Stay 60 is the thing,
Exactly. I mean, I got it for 40 technically because of like the coupon thing, whatever the hell they're called, the vouchers.
Yeah.
So I was able to justify it in my brain that way of like, oh, I only technically paid $40 for it. So,
maybe 50, right?
Well, no, because you'd assume that I'm going to be getting Pokemon, which is a $60 purchase, and you pay $100 for the vouchers, so 60 and 40.
Oh, you're not counting them as two $50 vouchers. You're counting it as one $40 and one $60 voucher.
Clever.
Exactly, to make it better.
You're really playing with your mind there, Jared.
Yep.
Whatever
you
helps you sleep at night.
Exactly. Before Jordan goes, anything else you want to mention, Dom?
Yeah, I also played a lot more of Dragon's Dogma on the Switch. It's a really cool fucking game. I wish more people played it.
You think it'll ever get a sequel?
Yeah, I do. Someone did an interview with the creator, who is also creator or director. I don't know. I don't even remember the guy's name. From Capcom, right? He also did like Devil May Cry, and he that guy talked a lot about how much he liked making this game and the different things he did that were unique to this game, which are still unique to games, some of them, which is I find bizarre. Like the pawn system in that game is so damn cool. How that functions. It's like even a step cooler than the multiplayer in like Dark Souls in those games. It's super innovative, and I'm surprised that we've not seen more like that.
Well, the sales success too of Devil May Cry 5 and the critical success could lead towards Capcom giving him more leeway, right, and letting him pursue a sequel for it. So
yeah, it's one of those interesting midpoints where it's not like something that was released and then you never hear much about it. It's something that's been ported to so many different systems. So it's like clearly there's some value in it, but not enough for a sequel, but just for a bunch of ports of the first. You know what I mean? It's this weird middle ground where you can't really tell for sure how valuable it really is. But that's been a fun game. It's pretty large too, and it's actually an interesting one. It's the first example of a Switch port that I've seen. Like graphically, it's has some issues. Like everything pops in late, like environments, like trees, and especially stuff in the distance. But even characters, you'll be like, someone all of a sudden will just 10 feet in front of you just appear out of nowhere because the graphics just haven't loaded yet. Super bad about that. It just can be irritating, but it makes me hesitant about Witcher 3 on Switch, but also kind of excited because if they can port Witcher 3 to Switch without that problem, then that's even more impressive. But
do you remember the trailer for City Skylines when that port was announced? Like even the trailer was chugging on the Nintendo Switch.
Oh,
like
no,
the
I
trailer
don't think I ever watched it.
It was not great. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'm gonna segue, so finish up.
Oh, I was just gonna say Dragon's Dogma is one of those games that I want to get to, but I don't think I ever will.
Yeah. It's kind of niche at this point. It's a weird game, but I really love it. Last thing, I finished Gears 5. It's a great game. I stand by
I need to
everything
get
I said
around to
last time.
playing it. I haven't hopped back yet. I need to finish it before Breakpoint comes out on the 4th. All these games I need to finish, or at least be done with in some capacity.
It definitely ends on a high. I'll say that.
Yeah, I've heard great things. I'm not surprised. I can't wait to finish it myself. Jordan, did you play more Borderlands 3 this week?
I did indeed. Real quick, I would just like to say, since Dom mentioned Switch ports, we are now in the final realm of Wii U to Nintendo Switch ports that we need, Dom. Now,
what's missing?
There was a recent announcement. Jerrad, could you help me with that? I'm trying to.
I got it. Tokyo Mirage.
What's that?
Tokyo Mirage Sessions.
There you go. Yeah, fucking. Well, how is Dom the one to know of all of us?
Sharp FE or something. Really
yeah,
weird
so
title.
it's
yeah.
All it is Persona Fire Emblem crossover, which I'm definitely interested in. So now, Dom, all we need is that Twilight Princess Windbreaker combo pack, baby.
Oh, give up on that. They're going to sell them individually for $60. We just talked about this.
By combo pack, I mean $120, which that's another thing. That's some other Nintendo shit they would do where it's like, you can get one for $60 or the other for $60, or you can get them both for $120.
That's what they're doing with Pokemon, which is so funny.
Yep. So, anyways.
Oh, man.
They just can't give you anything. Like, Jesus Christ. But anyways, no discount whatsoever. So yeah, we need that last bastion covered there. But yes, Borderlands, as you inquired about, Jerrad. I got around to playing some co-op this week. Some couch co-op. So, this is where the game really starts to break down, gentlemen. This is where it gets real rough because, as you know, in Borderlands, you're hopping in and out of menus constantly, changing your guns, your loadout, your gear, looking at the map, in and out, whatever. And when you're doing that, playing on a PS4 Pro with another person, that does not work out so well. It chugs considerably. Like, if I'm sitting here trying to shoot somebody and my buddy's trying to, like, figure his shit out in the menu real quick, it just screws me totally. 100%. And if we're both in the menus, they're still very slow. Which is even a bit of a problem in the single player, I would say. But here, it gets really bad. And if it was something where the game really only begged for you to be in the menus maybe once every 30 minutes, once an hour, then this would be different. But Borderlands is a menu-intensive, inventory-intensive game. So that is absolutely unforgivable. And it sucks, man, because they did a great job where you can kind of choose like old school Borderlands co-op or the new kind, which is the best kind, where I could have my buddy jump in where I was at in the campaign. Sure, he starts as level 1. He's not doing a whole lot of damage, but we kill a few enemies and he gets experience real quick and jumps up really fast to kind of level it out and meet me where I'm at. And they also have done it where I even tested it out with them where if you open a chest and you're both looking at the same guns, they'll be specific to the individual player. So the ones that I'm looking at will be around my level and will be specific to me, as in like picking it up. So if I pick up the weapon in the chest, he can get, if it's a 2-weapon chest, he can get the same, like, pick up 2 weapons that will be... Sorry, I'm not describing this very well. There's not, like, individual instances of guns, right? So if we're playing together and I pick out the gun out of this chest, the chest is still full of guns for you. Nothing's missing from the chest.
Okay.
Like on your side of the split screen?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like if it was 2 guns in the chest, you'll still see 2 guns even though I picked one up, because they're individually spread out so that you're not fighting over guns essentially. like you were in former Borderlands games. So that fixes the fact that I almost used to hate playing Borderlands with my friends because it's like, well, I'm a level 32 Siren halfway through the story or whatever, and you want to jump in. So we got to go all the way back to the beginning. I got to start a new character, probably choose a new class, and then we can play together, right? Well, this alleviates that because I was still getting story missions done. The progress that we did together, when I jumped back in for solo play the next day, it's like it all happened normally, but nothing was interrupted.
Oh, cool.
The quest line, the quests were completed. It's like nothing changed, right? In a good way. So everything went smoothly there. And then, yeah, you're not fighting over loot anymore, which obviously is a huge loot game. So they've fixed those problems, but then even on a PS4 Pro, which is obviously not an Xbox One or a PC, I don't know if you can do couch co-op on a PC. Which you should be able to. I know that's kind of a weird thing that PC doesn't have because they don't expect people to use it. But anyways,
Couch co-op? Don't you mean desk co-op?
Well, if you're not a fucking loser, then you have your shit hooked up to a screen that everybody can
Losers.
fucking look at instead of like, oh, look at my fucking 144 hertz 16-inch monitor that I have to sit 2 inches away from, bro. Anyways.
Got him.
Anyways, so yeah, they fixed these things, but then playing on a console, it's not unplayable, but dude, it's rough, like very, very rough to the point where I'm like, how did they release this? So that is, I guess, the Borderlands update. I've progressed further, obviously. And you know what, guys? I guess I just have to get over it. I guess I'm just gonna be forced when I play open world or, RPG style games. I guess I'm just gonna be forced to do side quests now, because apparently that's how it is. Everybody's copied Assassin's Creed, where it's like, oh, you've been doing the main story. And then about 3/4 of the way through the game, it's like, oh, sorry, dude. We developed these side quests and spent all this time on them. We really want you to look at that content that we made. So, unfortunately, you're not high enough level. You can either bang your head against this brick wall or go do some side quests and not mess with this main storyline for a few hours. It's like, why am I forced to do side quests now? That's ridiculous. If I want to, I should be able to go do them in these, like, play your own way type of fucking video games, and yet you're essentially forcing me to do side quests because otherwise there's no way I'm going to be able to progress through the main campaign without issue.
Are there side quests that are like magic tricks at all?
God.
Magic tricks.
Randy
do you
Pitchford.
mean?
Like pull like a rabbit out of a hat or something?
Or USB out of a...
I guess I'll end my little Borderlands rant there, Dom, which is, people... Jerrad was asking me last week kind of about what I thought about the humor, and a lot of talk has been had about Borderlands 3 humor, about whether it's great or whether it's awful. And I was telling Jerrad, I think it's about the same as, how Borderlands 1 and 2 were, which is that it's very like try hard, internet referencey, I can has cheeseburger meme humor, and it is most of the time very much miss for me. But yeah, I'll just say that has not gotten any lighter. It does get to the point where it's grating, I think. I don't think it's necessarily quite as grating as maybe some people might say it is, because people act like it's just an offense to humanity, almost. And it's not quite there. It's not quite a crime against humanity, though I'm sure Randy Pitchford has knowledge of some of that stuff. Man, there was a joke there, and I just couldn't nail it. I couldn't nail the landing, but I do think that the humor is just... It's... For it to be as lackluster, I think, and mediocre most of the time as it is, it just doesn't need to be shoved down your throat as often as it is. I think they just lean on it way too much, and I don't know if they think they're funny or what, but they're really trying hard, and man, a lot of the jokes are just like, oh, guys, why? You know, like...
It's like the people you go to the mall with, and they're like, man, I really want to go check out Spencer's Gifts because it's hilarious. And you're like, no, it's not. Are you guys familiar with Spencer's Gifts? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was hilarious in 6th grade.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, there's certain people who just, their humor doesn't, grow with the rest of them sometimes. And I think Borderlands is a classic case of that. Which, to each their own, but... like I said, it's just so up front in this game, and I don't necessarily understand why it needs to be. So yeah, that's how I'm feeling about Borderlands now. And I will agree with sentiment that I've heard in a couple of different places that people have made, which is that this would have been a great game to get several years ago, like I've said, but just so many years after Borderlands 2, the quality of life improvements just aren't enough for me. And now, like, getting to new planets and stuff, it's still just like, yeah, man, this is cool and all, but you've had, 6 or 7 years, and Borderlands 3 is just, a little bit tighter, better version of Borderlands 2. And also, I will say, playing the pre-sequel since Borderlands 2 with the the zero gravity kind of booster packs that you have jumping around on the moon of Pandora, it almost feels kind of like a step back now that I don't have that to access, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure other people that didn't play the pre-sequel are like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's cool just to run around and do vehicles, but for me, it almost does feel like that it's a chunk of mobility, a tool in my arsenal for mobility that I had that is no longer there. And someone mentioned, the possibility of them having jetpacks. Not whether the studio, the person mentioned, but I think that would be really cool, man, if there was better character mobility. Like, we've seen it in so many first-person shooters with Titanfall and Call of Duty doing their, wall running and their thruster packs or whatever. So it would be cool to see that in Borderlands. Stuff like that, I think, could have changed the game, but really they just tightened the screws a little bit, and unfortunately some of the screws were left untightened when we're talking about, co-op frame rates and stuff like that. So
it's so crazy to think like a game like Battleborn derailed Borderlands so much.
Dude,
Yay.
I've been thinking about Battleborn a lot recently, Jerrad.
You're probably the only one.
It's well, no, I think there's plenty of us that are looking at Borderlands 3 and being like, wow, Battleborn hurts even more now,
Yeah.
And I will say, I think you guys got it right when you were I was like, is anybody excited for Borderlands 3 coming up? And you guys were like, I'll play it at some point, maybe. And I think that's probably what I should have done, is just waited for a sale, because I'm enjoying it, but did I need it now at $60 when there's plenty of other shit coming out that's probably going to be, I feel like Ghost Recon Breakpoint has a chance to be a bigger jump from Wildlands than we got from Borderlands 2 to 3, which is crazy since it's only a couple years difference. So that's where I'm at, Borderlands 3.
Anything else before we hop into the news, Jordan? You want to mention real quick?
Yeah, I will say that I have read quite a few comic books in the last week, Jerrad, and I guess I read through the All-Star stuff, DC stuff, so All-Star Superman and All-Star Batman and Robin the Boy Wonder, and I had previously read the All-Star Batman from DC Rebirth. All-Star Batman and Robin the Boy Wonder is part of my wrapping up of Frank Miller's Batman universe, I guess you could call it. Between Year One, the 3 Dark Knight Returns books, and Batman and Robin the Boy Wonder, and then I guess Batman Spawn, which who knows if I'll ever get around to reading that. The Spawn crossover, but this one is the wildest, man, because it is Jim Lee, who personally I think is the greatest comic book artist of all time. I think that this is him basically at his peak, doing some of the best artwork of his career, and yet the story that he's doing it for is wildly, I don't want to say terrible, but it is not good, man. It is whack as fuck, I'll say that. And a lot of the stuff that I've been reading from Frank Miller post the year 2000 is pretty fucking whack. Specifically because of his attachment to 9/11 and how basically just like fucking honed in he gets on that shit. Because I also ended up reading, have either of you guys heard of the comic Holy Terror by Frank Miller? So originally he wrote this as a fucking Batman story, and it's literally Batman and fucking Catwoman throughout the book, right? But it was so fucking controversial that DC did not even want to touch it. And he basically took the ears off of the masks of Batman and Catwoman and called them the Fixer and just a cat burglar. But it is straight up them. And they're doing the Batman and Catwoman thing. The only difference is that it came out about 10 years after 9/11, and it is heavily focused on basically just anti-Islam sentiments, I would say. It is
shit.
So if Dark Knight Returns and Dark Knight 3 or Dark Knight Strikes Again, I'm sorry, Dark Knight Returns has a little bit of it. That's the first book in the trilogy. Then you have Strikes Again. Then you have Dark Knight 3, The Master Race. If 2 and 3 did not really get me in the mindset of being like, whoa, I think Frank Miller's kind of a fucking racist, homophobic, xenophobic asshole dude. And the only reason I put so many labels on it is because he is like anti a lot of different types of people. But this book specifically just goes after Middle Eastern folk, I guess you could say, in such a way that is just weird and fucked up and obviously not cool and not okay. It's a 122 page, kind of graphic novel style thing. I don't necessarily know that I need to go into the plot because it's just kind of trash, man. Like, first of all, his art has never been great, but he's always kind of like pushed it, of like half of his books are drawn by him when they just shouldn't be. And this one in particular is like, the art is just like so rough, man. Like, there's so much distraction in like scratch marks and like paint splotches all over the page that you can't even see what the fuck you're looking at. You don't even know what the fuck is going on in the panel. So even though there are panels where you can clearly tell, like, okay, this is supposed to be Batman and Catwoman going after these, Islamic terrorists in this utterly not so subtle way of kind of attacking, basically Middle Eastern people. And I think that's my biggest complaint with Frank Miller's writing, now that I've kind of wrapped up, I guess, the Batman section of reading through a lot of his stuff and rereading some of it, is just that he has almost no subtlety whatsoever, especially when it comes to kind of political themes and political ties to the real world, I guess you could say, but also just in general, he has no subtlety and really no tact. So I would say that in that sense, he is a very poor writer, even though he has written some great stuff. Batman Year One, I talked about how I'm not as thrilled on Dark Knight Returns as general comic book fans are, even though it's still, looking back on it, I think it is the best of the trilogy. But Batman Year One is surely a classic, and Returns is too. Dark Knight Returns is too. But then even stuff like Ronin is really great and is largely what influenced Samurai Jack, one of my favorite cartoon series of all time. And so he definitely has classics. He did a lot of great stuff for Daredevil and yada yada yada. But once you get into the 21st century, with Frank Miller, it is largely downhill. There's a couple of good books that he's written, but between Dark Knight 2 and 3, Batman and Robin: The Boy Wonder, and Holy Terror, it is rough stuff, man. It is nowhere close to where he was when he was writing stuff like 300 or Sin City, or the stuff I mentioned before with Batman. So it's difficult to see from someone who, had he not written all those poor books in the 21st century, I think would certainly be considered one of the greatest comic book writers of all time. So all that to say is, yeah, I've clearly been getting, I guess you could say, even obsessed with comic books at this point, and have certainly gone all the way down that rabbit hole. And the Frank Miller section of that rabbit hole is one that I will not oft be returning to. So sure, there's some books that I would love to go back to, Year One and Ronin in particular. But yeah, stuff like Batman and Robin, or even like Holy Terror. Like I got through it, I read it, and like I'm good. I can speak on it without ever needing to reevaluate, I think. So yeah, I guess I won't really belabor too much more on comics, since that was a sort of Frank Miller deep dive. But yeah, shout out to Black Panther. I think that is my favorite Marvel fresh start. We're on like issue 17, 18 now that just came out, and between the art and the writing, I think it is easily that and probably Daredevil. But even this is more consistent as the best Marvel fresh start books.
Nice. Let's find in the news. We have no quickie news, really. We're going to be talking about mostly the state of play that happened on Tuesday. That's the big Last of Us Part 2 one. We'll talk about that at the end. But in terms of what was shown...
It's pronounced T-Lau?
I believe it's pronounced T-Lau 2.
T-Lau 2.
So it started off with Humanity, which is like a weird artsy-fartsy game. And it actually is developed by Enhanced Games, who made Tetris Effect and... the VR title Res Infinite, so you can kind of see where it gets its roots from. It's going to be like a weird psychedelic, I don't know if they've announced that it'll eventually come to VR, but the like base game of Humanity isn't. But it's just like a group of people running into one another, one half being black and white and the other half being like colored, like rainbow colored. That's supposed to be launching in 2020. Nothing else really was given about the game. They didn't even really explain gameplay. It seems like it's probably a puzzle game of some sort. And then following this, we got a story trailer for Modern Warfare, which was great. I thought it was a really solid trailer. The budget for these Call of Duty games is insane. Soap McTavish in the trailer, like their cutscenes are some of the best cutscenes I've seen in video games.
I would say they've been that way for a minute.
Yeah, these ones are like, oh, this is the end of the gen, like, beautiful. The story looks really interesting. Looks like they're taking... The reason they wanted to remake this game and even retell a different story, but kind of in the same setting, is because the way we look at war now is kind of shifted, and the public is more privy to how gray war can be, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds. The problem is that during the trailer at the end, they quickly showed off the survival mode that's in Spec Ops, and there was a little disclaimer at the bottom that people missed. It turns out that the survival mode, which is the horde mode inside of Spec Ops, is going to be exclusive to PlayStation 4 for a year. So people on PC or Xbox won't be able to play it until next October.
That's some real shit right there.
Which, I'm still buying this game because I'd never play that mode to begin with. But if I was somebody who did enjoy that mode, I would be really pissed off. And like, it's weird because, like, to me, I think getting a game exclusive for a year, I think, is less egregious because it's like an entire game. Like you don't have to worry like you're not worrying
It's
that you're
on
buying
or off switch.
exactly. You're not buying a more inferior version than somebody
Right.
else's, right? With this,
They're getting like a fraction of the game.
with this, I'm paying $60 for the game. You're paying $60 for the game, but you're getting more game.
Yeah, it's a sizable chunk.
Exactly. The bright spot with this is that it seems that they're all the like week whenever new maps come out, the week long exclusivity isn't going to happen this time around. Instead of that, they're going with the we'll just take a mode for an entire year. It's obviously it's very anti-consumer. I'd be curious to see what the actual deal was with PlayStation and Activision on this. It's really gross to me. Like I could even see like a DLC being exclusive, as long as it has its own separate like multiplayer server, right? With this, it's like an entire game mode. It's like really weird to me. Like I'm not pissed off about it, like I said, because it's not a game mode I would really ever play, but it is gross. Like, yeah, I don't even like with Destiny they had the exclusive strike missions, right? And like that's a mission. I just think a mode is more egregious. I don't know how you guys feel about it. I know Dom, it probably doesn't affect you because you have no interest in playing that mode either. And Jordan, obviously, you're not going to be picking up Call of Duty. But how do you guys feel about it?
Similarly, because this is unprecedented, right? Like, there's been obviously exclusive games entirely, but like you mentioned, that's a different thing. This is just the value proposition is kind of what makes this especially weird because you're paying the same amount. Potentially for less of a game than someone else.
Sorry to interrupt you, but on
So,
top of it, Call of Duty's annual franchise too, which is another note on this, is that the new Call of Duty will be coming out when this opens up, right? So it's not like other games that have releases every 4 or 5 years, 3 years.
By the time that mode is out on other consoles, the players will have moved on for the most part.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's particularly weird because they've escalated. Right, so there was. I remember there was a bit of a spot made about the Destiny stuff that was exclusive on PS4, right? And they just took it one step. Activision took it one step further now, which is like, okay, like apparently you didn't get enough. It worked well enough for you the first time that you're even going further down, that path of even more exclusive stuff.
Also, Sony too. It's Sony and Activision both agreeing to this deal.
Right.
So it's like, yeah, I think people calling out one over the other, I think they're both equally guilty of this because obviously they made the deal with one another. Obviously, I don't know why people are getting mad at the developers. Like one of the developers at Infinity Ward said, it's like it's way above my pay grade. I didn't make the decision. They don't. It's not their. Yeah. It's not them. So don't be yelling at the developers. But it is gross, and it is a weird precedent, like you said, because they went with Destiny. It was a weapon and a strike, which is still kind of gross. But this is like it's like a part of the game.
It's even more.
Yeah.
It is similar to, I think the situation is similar to what we were talking about with Nintendo earlier, which is that this company is large enough to weather the storm of whatever this may bring. Whether it's Nintendo, putting out a game for $60 that should be priced around, $40, or these guys doing something where they know they kind of have you by the balls if you're like a Call of Duty fan that buys it every year. And like I said, they can weather any storm that it may bring, whether it be social media backlash or some section of the fandom, kind of boycotting the game, even though we have seen historically that that's not necessarily either effective or even something that people honestly carry through on. So I think that they are just looking at it as something that they can push past, and by the time this, like we were saying, by the time this thing gets out, people are going to be moved on to the next Call of Duty, and they're not going to care about this issue anymore. So it won't be something that they need to worry about. And I think Activision specifically, but Activision and EA do that a lot, where they do stuff. I think they deliberately do things that will piss people off, and they know it, but they also know that they don't care really, because the stink that people are going to make about it is not nearly enough to truly affect their bottom line to the point where they're actually going to care about it. So I think that's what we have here.
Well, and from a critical perspective, whoever's reviewing this game on Xbox is going to have a different experience than somebody who's reviewing it on PlayStation 4, right?
Sure.
Because one of them has a mode that the other one doesn't. So it's going to be interesting to see how that's reflected. You remember the last couple of years where Activision's kind of delayed the microtransactions in the games until after reviews drop. So
they also, you'll notice that the exclusive content is going to the most popular console in this situation, which is important
exactly.
as well.
And people say like, oh, Nintendo and Microsoft make exclusive deals too, though Microsoft hasn't really gone into the content game as of late. They've just pretty much been like actual titles, right? Like PUBG or Tomb Raider or whatever. This is gross, and obviously it's Sony's to blame and Activision is to blame. I just hope that this doesn't continue as a trend. But with I know EA is the easy person to point out and hate, and I get that. But like Activision should start getting the vitriol that EA does, because they're doing a lot of stuff. And this is just my opinion, that's been worse than what EA has done, and like this is something that's like really gross. So, but like I said, it doesn't really affect me because I'm not going to play the mode, but it doesn't mean it's not.
Yeah, and I guess I want to say, I mean, this is like, if this is the biggest problem we have, then we're in a pretty good place in life in general. But I think even if this specific good Lord, Sammy Sprinkler over here, this specific decision might be like a net financial positive for both companies, I would predict the accumulative effect of these types of decisions, accompanied by Activision not too long ago laying off a lot of people, only a few months after reporting record profits, and then when the CEO's salary is as high as it is. Not that all of these things are directly related and have a cause and effect on each other, but it all, like, these things can start to add up, and then you end up as your EA, who's not a liked company, and eventually it becomes bad for business, right? So maybe it might seem like a smart financial decision now, but based on your resume thus far and everything else, and like eventually some of this, I would hope, comes around to bite them in the ass in meaningful ways. Because
I don't think they realize that there is a possibility of things coming back around. Things that they have put out there coming back around to haunt them, because as you aptly put, Dom, it is bad for business, and it just reeks of short-sightedness to me when these companies do things like this, because they don't realize there could be a situation where they might actually, for one, need the goodwill of the consumers, where they might not be able to just kind of brute force their way into these situations and have their way, as it were, and they might be in a situation where they could where they're, maybe their backs are a little bit up against the wall. I'm not saying that any of these companies are about to fail. What I'm saying is everybody has rainy days, and they might wish that they had treated everybody else a little bit better when their rainy days come.
Yeah, and I focused on Activision there, but obviously in this case it's partly Sony, and Sony also had problems in the not too recent past with, people criticizing them for not allowing crossplay and that kind of stuff too. And it seemed like for a moment they were starting to do some more crossplay stuff, and maybe they were starting to turn a corner a little bit on like some more consumer friendly choices. This is obviously not consistent with that trend though, so that's disappointing.
The thing too is that this doesn't only alienate Xbox gamers, it alienates the PC community too, so it's not just a console thing, because PC Call of Duty isn't getting this mode either.
That's the thing. There's only so many people that you can alienate until you really start fucking yourself over.
Yeah. Let's get through these couple of announcements, and we'll get to The Last of Us Part 2 stuff. So they showed off Arise, A Simple Story, which is a really cool indie game. It looks like claymation style in terms of art. It's from Piccolo Studios, who doesn't really have any prior work. The actual gameplay looks like a mix between Journey and, do you guys remember Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons? You guys remember that game? So it looks like a combination of both of those. You're obviously this Viking that seems like he's trying to find Valhalla, because at the beginning of the trailer he's burned at the, at the like what is it called? The when Vikings set their they burn their dead over like a
Viking funeral.
Exactly, yeah. And then he wakes up in what seems to be like the afterlife, and he's searching for something, and then you see like a stone statue of a woman. So it seems like he's searching for Valhalla. Really beautiful, has some great scenes, and it's not going to be a difficult game, but it looks like it could be a really captivating experience. That is releasing December 3rd, which is really cool.
Were you looking for the word funeral pyre, Jerrad?
Funeral pyre, there you go. Yeah, that's what I was trying to find in my my file cabinet that is my brain. Next up, they showed the medieval demo that Shadow dropped, and if you played it, you got the Dan's helmet equipment in the game, which it's a helmet that increases damage to your character. So it's like a way to you can choose to equip it or unequip it. It's like a way to boost the difficulty in the game for yourself, because all the damage you intake is boosted, right? So it's like an artificial way of upping the difficulty for yourself, which is really cool. So if you're interested in the game at all, go play the demo so you can have that helmet unlocked when the full game releases.
I think that's an ingenious thing to do with any video game that you are developing, by the way, which is simple ways for people to change the way that they play your game, for them to choose to play the game differently and kind of reformats the experience. I think that is ingenious, and that's how you get buzz on Twitch. That's how you get speedrunners interested, stuff like that. So,
well, even Sekiro had the Demon's Bell, which when you rang, it made the game more difficult too, and you could choose to either ring that bell or not ring that bell. Ring that bell, ring the bell. Yeah, so I agree with you. It's cool when you add those little things that outside of just a difficulty setting, because changing the difficulty can alter trophies or achievements too, which sucks. But like an in-game item where you can wear it and it makes it more difficult can give you the difficult challenge you want without changing any of that stuff or having to restart the game or anything like that.
I feel like changing the difficulty level just feels more of a standard up or down.
Yeah.
Whereas the things that we're discussing here is more of a kind of a spatial difference. It feels like more of a right or left shifting as opposed to just bumping up or bumping down.
Next up, they showed off the Death Stranding PS4 Pro Limited Edition, coming in at $399. So it's a white console with like the iconic black like ink hands. If you have seen any of the Death Stranding trailers, you'll know what I'm talking about. And it comes with a DualShock 4 that is like a transparent yellow. People are making jokes that it's to indicate the P, because there's like the whole urine system in Death Stranding, so it's pretty funny.
What's and then the urine system?
Oh, you didn't see the last trailer that at Gamescom? There's
I'm blackout now.
So there's basically a system in the game where the main character's bladder fills up and you have to pee, and when you pee, it leaves a mushroom in the place that you peed. And Hideo Kojima afterwards said that if enough people pee in the same spot, something magical will happen.
Wow.
Yeah. So people were joking that that the transparent yellow is for the pee.
Good thing we're pushing games into new horizons, right? 2019, here we go.
Right. Number one. Get it? So today, the day of recording, September 26th, Hideo Kojima also tweeted that the game went gold. So lessens the...
Golden shower, maybe.
Yeah.
lessens the opportunity of the game getting delayed. But yeah, it's gone gold, which means that it took about 3 years and a little over 3 months for it to... the game to get gold, from announcement to gold, which is pretty impressive.
Gentlemen, I think it's about time you guys took your hats off to Mr. Kojima, because you have been giving me all these fucking meme jokes for the last few years of, I'll play Death Stranding when I'm dead. It'll be 100 years before we see this game on shelves. You and the rest of the fucking internet. And I fucking told you. Give him a chance, because Kojima will surprise you. And I'm not saying it's going to be great, but he fucking turned this shit around. And he built the fucking studio in the meantime.
Yes.
Didn't even have an engine. Like, this shit happened.
But they didn't build an engine for the game. Remember, they're using the Decima engine from Horizon.
Plenty of people don't build their own engines.
But I'm saying...
This is a feat.
Yeah. We also don't know the length of the game, which is going to be interesting, because that will also tell, a lot.
Yeah, I think it is going to be on the shorter end. I think, 6-ish hours probably. Maybe.
But I will eat my words that it did release a lot sooner than I did. I'm interested to see what the actual length is, because... there was some wild stuff of people saying it could be as short as 6 hours, which would be crazy, and I don't think that's possible. But, yeah. We'll see when it comes out, but you're right. We have to eat our words, because it's coming out in 2019, which is
I want people to give Kojima credit, because, the whole internet was just like...
I think that guy gets plenty of credit.
So long on Phantom Pain, whatever. It's like, dude, most of the people making these jokes were not... game developers. I didn't see a lot of game developers talking that shit, so I am thoroughly impressed that he was able to build a studio from the remnants, the ashes of his former Kojima productions. He was able to identify the engine that he wanted to use and get it running and working with his team, and regardless of whether it's a 5-hour game or 15-hour game, he was able to create something in that span of time that if nothing else, has caught people's attention the world over. So, and I have my criticisms of Kojima for sure, but for that, I've got to give him a tip of the cap.
And hopefully it's finished, unlike Phantom Pain.
Yes.
I have this crazy theory that I just now thought of, and it's just blowing my mind.
Whoa. A Death Stranding theory?
Oh, it's so much deeper than you'll ever predict. Ready? So
There's
what
so
if...
many of these.
Well, this is next level. No. So Kojima mentioned, or maybe it was just a joke. I don't know if it was a real quote or not, but something along the lines of we're already playing the game, right? Months ago or something stupid like that. I don't know if he actually said it or not. Someone else suggested it. So what if, when this game releases, somehow embedded within the game and the gameplay, it's revealed that this game holds the final piece of evidence that will impeach Donald Trump as the president of the United States.
We're moving on. So The Last of Us Part 2 trailer was revealed. It gave us a release date.
Be a Metal Gear sequel.
It's coming out February 21st, so a week after what most people thought. Most people were hoping that Valentine's Day 2020. With it, we got some more story details. Jordan, are you blackout on this? Because I don't want to spoil this for you if you didn't see the thing.
Sorry, blackout on what?
Last of Us Part 2.
Yes, I am. Yeah, if we could just not talk about story specifics, although I know that in the trailer you see Joel. The thing is I already knew from the reveal trailer that Joel has something to do with this game.
Yeah.
But up until now, we weren't sure if he was necessarily a tangible character in the game, and now it seems like that is confirmed.
Well, it's impossible to avoid the Joel reveal because every thumbnail on YouTube is going to have Joel or has had Joel. Ours isn't because I'm not like that. It's going to have Ellie.
I already knew he was in the game to some extent, but people were wondering whether he's a part of Ellie's imagination or if he's a tangible character, and it seems like he's more of a tangible character, but yeah, I think that's as far as we should go story-wise.
Yeah. Okay, so... what else was going to... since the actual reveal, Naughty Dog lead game designer Emilia Schatz also revealed in an interview with IGN that Last of Us Part 2 won't have multiplayer, which kind of got a lot of people bummed because if you're familiar with Last of Us, the multiplayer in the first one was really great, actually quite surprising, because the Uncharted multiplayer modes aren't necessarily bad, but they're more tacked on, and it's, it doesn't feel as fleshed out, whereas the Last of Us multiplayer people found love with, and it had a tale to it, and people got really involved in it, and it kind of took the gaming world by storm because people fell in love with the single player of Last of Us, and when they were finished, they went to jump into the multiplayer thinking oh, this is just a fun time, I'm going to play a couple matches, and they really found it to be a worthwhile experience. So people are kind of upset that the second one won't have a multiplayer mode. There's a couple of reasons for this, probably. One of them is that Naughty Dog has announced that this is the longest game that they've ever made in terms of play length, and which means that the scope of the game is probably the largest it's ever been for them, which means that most of their resources were put into this. So if your ambition, your goals are to do this and make this type of game with this type of scope, you don't want to pull resources away to a multiplayer mode, right? Some people have speculated that maybe when the re-release happens on PS5, which will obviously happen because whether it's backwards compatible or not, they're going to repackage this thing and try to get another $60 out of everybody, right? Or at least like 40. That it could possibly come shipped with a multiplayer mode that kind of gives people an incentive on top of, better graphics to purchase it again and get back into the world of Last of Us Part 2. Obviously, we don't want to go into any story stuff, but I want to hear from at least you, Dom, because I know, Jordan, you didn't watch it, and maybe, Jordan, you can give your opinions outside of seeing the newest trailer in terms of what this trailer did for your expectations for the game. For me, I talked about how I really loved The Last of Us, but I felt that the shooting mechanics were probably the weakest part of the game. With all the footage we've gotten so far, I think that this is going to be the best gameplay Naughty Dog has put into a game. I think it'll probably surpass all of the Uncharted games. Also in actual gun combat and bow combat and everything, it just looks really solid. And surprisingly enough to me, I think that this has a chance to be one of my favorite games of all time. Last of Us wasn't that. Obviously, Last of Us is a game I really love, and it's easily in my top 10, but it's not my number one, right? Which it is for a lot of people, understandably. Seeing this game and the level of detail in the animation and everything that's going into it, how, Neil Druckmann's talked about how the first game was about love and what you do for somebody you love, and this game is about hate and how that can consume you and what you do with that. And he seems like the type of person who would only want to make a sequel if there was a story that needed to be told. And I was already anticipating this game, but I do think that this is my most anticipated game out of those first couple of months. It passed Cyberpunk. It passed Cyberpunk for me.
It's a big swing here, Jerrad. From you obviously being interested in T-Lao 2, but certainly not anywhere close to your most anticipated game of that,
chunk,
release window.
So before E3, it was Avengers.
Big deal.
Yeah, before E3 was Avengers, and then I actually was one of the few people that liked the gameplay stuff. I didn't I don't think it was as bad as people thought, or even the character designs. Right. But the Cyberpunk stuff took it above Avengers, right? And it's been Cyberpunk for the longest time. But this latest trailer for me, for Last of Us, really did a lot in terms of gameplay and story. That, it's my most anticipated for that month long, where we're getting 4 of the biggest games of the generation. It's crazy.
I don't think people realize, guys, there's never going to be another time where a big game release isn't coming out. There's never going to be another month where a big game release isn't coming out. Now, you might not be interested in it. It might not be your cup of tea. But it's smooth sailing from here on out, to quote Queens of the Stone Age.
Yeah, and
it's just happening. It's just happening. Even in the summer, we're getting Fire Emblem, we're getting Ultimate Alliance 3. At least Nintendo's holding down the summer, so it's just a flowing stream at this point.
And to your point, people will look at those games and be like, well, those aren't AAA, Jordan. Look at the sales numbers. That's what he means. Big games in terms of captivating large audiences.
Exactly. They aren't. I would say, for production budget wise, I would feel like
Ultimate Alliance is
stuff is
an indie
Nintendo's
plus.
Really, there is their stuff, their first party stuff is the highest polish AA you could think of, right? Because even Breath of the Wild is not anywhere close to an actual PS4 open world game, right? Horizon coming out right around the same time. It's nowhere close to that as far as breadth and scope, but it has a high amount of polish. So, yeah, they're still big releases nonetheless, right?
Yeah. Obviously, without getting into spoilers, Dom, what did the trailer do for you in terms of your anticipation?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I hadn't watched it. I'm definitely, Jordan, I think you have the right approach in life.
Whoa.
Definitely
Vindication.
Yeah, you were right to not watch this unless you needed convincing to buy the game, which I didn't need that.
Exactly.
I don't think
it's watching trailers. I don't think it's stuff that I'm not convinced. That's the only time I watch a trailer now, is if it's a game or movie that I'm not convinced on.
The thing done with it is I don't think it spoiled anything. I think we have some like Ragnarok Infinity War hijinks in the editing of it.
Oh, absolutely. That's not even the thing that I would be worried about
personally.
It's more just like, oh man, I wish I could experience this in the sequence of the game with the controller in my lap, with my surround sound, and it's not streaming over YouTube, all that type, yada yada yada.
I wouldn't have watched it if we didn't do the podcast. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
But I got to do my service for the podcast. Take a bullet.
I mean, it definitely.
I can appreciate that because it probably wouldn't be great if it was like, hey, this giant trailer for this giant game with a release date just came out. Anybody watch that shit on this podcast? Crickets. That'd probably not be the best, you know.
It's just that the trailer certainly revealed some story beats, and I expect there will be, you know, twists and turns we don't know about, of course. But I feel like I learned a fuck of a lot from that trailer that it's not I wouldn't call it spoilers, you know. Certainly, it's not going to spoil the game in the most literal sense of the term. But it's just I would have liked to have learned some of that stuff myself and come to the same conclusions. And it wasn't just the trailer, but I've read some tweets from some of the creators that I'm like, okay, I wish I didn't read that. I just wish I could have came to that conclusion myself and learned that theme and some of that stuff myself. Again, and these are like privileged complaints of my life right now, but that's just where I'm.
Just that we have so much else to entertain us throughout any moment. Like I was talking about the constant stream of new releases. It's like I just focus on all my energy and time on stuff that's already out and enjoying that. And then by the time I'm getting hyped on TLOW too, then it's like already out. It's already in my lap. So
yeah,
I mean, no matter what, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm 200,000% hyped and I'm ready.
For sure.
I don't know. This is going to be. I think I'm Jerrad. I'm with you. This has surpassed Cyberpunk and Elden Ring as my most anticipated.
Elden Ring has surpassed.
Well, yeah, because we don't
know anything.
Definitely.
Like I can't even be. Yeah. Well, no,
it's easier to be excited for games that are closer, I guess.
I think Elden Ring's coming out next year. We just don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
Like literally, like we have a CG trailer. It's like absolutely nothing. And with like From
all
Software,
you need to know is the words George Railroad Martin.
Exactly.
And we know it's a version of Dark Souls that has even deeper RPG mechanics and deeper lore. Apparently, they revealed. So
yeah, but the crazy thing is, I think if you watch
deeper.
If you have never played a From Software game and you watch Dark Souls 3, Bloodborne, and Sekiro, you could see some of the differences, but you wouldn't know the nuanced stuff that people who have played them, right? With the speed of combat and all of the different with the RPG systems and the menus. That's why until we see gameplay stuff for Elden Ring, it's like, well, yeah, it's going to be another From game with some new additions and differences, but what does it actually mean, right? So we'll see.
Real quick on TLOW, I just want to say I'm not going to replay the first game before it comes out because I've already played through the game and it's not one of my favorites of all time, although I can absolutely appreciate the mastercraft in storytelling that it is. So what I'm going to do is watch cutscenes on YouTube like a movie.
Nice. Hell yeah. Nice. Good choice. We're running a little long, so I wanted to talk about the Batman stuff, but we could talk about it later time. WB Montreal teased Court of Owls Batman game stuff. People thought it was going to lead to the State of Play. It didn't show up.
Teasing it for years at this point.
Then they thought it was going to be at... they haven't tweeted in 2 years on their Twitter account until this weekend.
I guess what I'm referencing is we've been hearing about a possible Batman Court of Owls game almost since Court of Owls came out. So
yeah. So it seems like they were teasing this for the Game Awards, which they picked a horrible weekend to do it, even though it was the 80th anniversary for Batman. You got to understand that people were anticipating for these events. Anyways, in terms of what we're going to be playing next week, I'm going to try to finish Control, Gears of War 5. Those are on my plate because I want to get those out of the way and be primed and ready to go for Breakpoint. I'm going to be playing Link's Awakening in between there too, but that's the game I play on the side. It's not my main focus because I do enjoy hopping in there with the. Also, we didn't mention it. The remastered orchestral score that they added to the game is great for Link's Awakening.
It's cool.
So just Link's Awakening and all those other games I mentioned. What about you, Dom?
Yeah, more Link's Awakening for sure. Shoot, I don't know. I mean, I still have Game Pass, so I downloaded Metro Exodus and Prey, so I might jump into one of those. I don't know.
They announced that a ukulele's coming to Game Pass, which I'm stoked because I was actually it's on sale a lot for like $20, $25, and I don't have to buy it now. I've been wanting to go back and play ukulele. I just am craving like a 3D platformer, with all of that jank included. Jordan, what about you?
So I want to real quick talk about something that I didn't talk about earlier from this past week that I watched, which is Midsommar. Also known as Midsummer. A lot of people are calling it. Have you guys seen Hereditary?
Yes. No. It's on my to-watch list for the year.
Yeah. So a lot of people love Hereditary. Came out last year. And between Hereditary and Midsommar, that is Ari Aster's first two films that he has directed and written. So I was not a huge fan of Hereditary. I think that similar to Frank Miller, there's a lot of subtlety missing that I think would bring nuance to these movies. But I would say I liked this one a little bit more. Whereas Hereditary is about kind of the loss of family members and how that affects the family and drives them to these far extents. Midsommar is about a group of people about our age, mid-20s, that are invited by one of their friends to go to this festival of sorts in their little Swedish village, and essentially, it's like this folk horror where they get kind of trapped by this cult and all the crazy shit that you might imagine goes down. And it's very bright and colorful and psychedelic, several drug trips throughout the film, and it is certainly probably too long and drawn out at 2.5 hours, and that's the theatrical cut, whereas the director's cut's pushing 3 at like 2 hours 50 minutes, I think. But nonetheless, I think, like I said, I liked it better than Hereditary, and it at least got me to the point where I am interested to see Ari Aster's third film. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm certainly not in love with him as a director, or he's not my new favorite, or my favorite new director, I should say. But would recommend it, and certainly to you, Dom, since you're a big fan of Hereditary. So
Midsommar.
Yeah, check it out. It just came out on digital. So there's that. And I'm sure I still will probably play some more Borderlands, maybe some more co-op. Would sure love a patch, man, for some of these, especially like frame rate issues and just the general chugginess. Another thing Andy Cortez was talking about on Kind of Funny Gamescast, and I could not agree more, is that some of the enemies are just so goddamn dark that you can't see them in darker environments, and the enemies need their own lighting system so that you can see, because sometimes I'm just shooting where there's a name popping up on the screen, so or a title in a health bar, I guess. But not going back into Borderlands criticism, just saying that I will probably be playing it, and I hope that there is another patch, continued patches. So there's that, and then at some point I will be getting back to Injustice Volume 3. I don't think I talked about Volume 2 on this show, just how much I was in love with Volume 1. And I'll just say for Volume 2 that it continues the greatness. Tom Taylor is also written Volume 3, Year 3 I should be saying, and I think this is his last of the years 1 through 5 of Injustice, so very excited to get to that, and just cannot recommend this book for fans of DC, for fans of comic books, superheroes, all that stuff. I think this is 100% essential reading, and is really, like, it's tough to say a masterpiece because, like, Tom Taylor doesn't do the whole run, but at least what I've read thus far is certainly a masterpiece. So I'll be reading more of that, and I'm sure plenty of other comics.
Thank you guys for listening. If you can, please go over to YouTube, search Controlled Interest, subscribe, hit the bell notification so you never miss an upload. Over on iTunes, if you leave us a review, it helps us move up in the algorithm so we can be seen by more people, which is great.
Algorithm.
Over on Twitter, you can follow me at Jerrad _. You can follow Dom at DomZorios. You can follow Jordan at Melamodus. And you can find us collectively at Controlled Interest, which is at CTRLINT. That's Controlled Interest abbreviated. We'll catch you guys next week in episode 161. Hopefully I have Control
June
Beat.
16th, 2016. Kojima Productions tweets, "Our game is still far from being released, but the game has already begun."
Thank you guys. Catch you next week. Bye.